Who are the Bengals going to take at number 5? That's the question a lot of us are asking here in Cincinnati. And to talk more about that is former NFL head coach Jim Mora Jr. Jim, I appreciate the time as always. Let's start with the 5th pick. And I think that a lot of casual Bengals fans that, follow the team, but aren't, diehards looking at the draft, breaking things down like we are, they're like, well, you got to take the offensive lineman. And when you're in that situation, and obviously I'm referring to Penei Sewell, how much does public pressure matter in the draft room? Do you feel it as a head coach? Do members of the front office feel it? Is that something that's even discussed before draft day?
Well, you feel it. You discuss it, but you really, honestly, you have to find a way to push it aside and make decisions that aren't based on emotion and then aren't based on the public perception or really even the wishes of your fan base, because you have to remember that you're the expert. You have to remember the time that you've invested in this process, the number of people that have gone out and scouted these players, the information they've accumulated. Only you in the room know what's best for your team at the deepest level. There's a lot of people that believe they know what's best for your team, and some of them may have a pretty good idea, but you are the expert. And so you have to tune out the noise, eliminate the emotion, and make the choice based upon all the facts that you know about this player or the players that you're considering, about your team, the future of the team, where you want your team to go, how you want them to get there. And then you have to trust that and make the decision that's right for the future of your franchise. And I think that's what most people do. I think when you get into an emotional game in the draft, you find yourself down the road regretting it. Not always, but oftentimes. And so I think it's very important that you shut out the noise.
I was just on a call with Bengals Director of Player Personnel, Duke Tobin, essentially the Bengals general manager, just not in title. And he said that the hardest part about scouting and evaluating players is figuring out how they, if they love the game and how much they're willing to do to be successful, if they love football or if they love what football brings them. How did you go about it, and how do you go about evaluating that during this process?
See, I agree 100%. It is really tough to find the true motivation for every single player, because there are players that absolutely have to have football in their life. And we're talking about the Bengals, and you remember when the quarterback Blake, he had a great comment, I got to have it. It's like eating, it's like breathing air. I got to have football. And it was on an NFL Films deal. And you want players like that, but there are players that do it for the money or the fame or the cars or the clothes or to satisfy a family need. And as a scout, as an evaluator, you've got to find the way to get to the bottom of that. And I think that's through discussions with the player, with their family, with coaches that they've had in the past, with trainers, with equipment men, with the video staff, with the student managers, everybody they've been around. I think you have to do your homework, and you have to try to get the best feel for why this man is playing football. Is it just a part of his fiber, or is it just something he wants to do? And you want those guys on your team that it's a part of their fiber. It doesn't have to be everything in their life, but it's got to be way up there, because you're about to make a huge, huge investment in them, and you want the commitment to be there.
So when you have a guy like Joe Burrow, who comes from an LSU and had firsthand experience with not only Jamar Chase, but Terrace Marshall, multiple prospects that they're evaluating. You have a Jonah Williams, who obviously worked with Alex Leatherwood and some of these other offensive linemen at Alabama. How valuable is their input? Because they saw those guys day in and day out, especially a guy like Burrow, who was the quarterback, who was the team leader.
Well, I think you're going to bring them in and you're going to talk to them about their personalities, their motivations, their work ethic, their character, those types of things. I think it's sometimes tough when you put a young man in that position where you're asking them to evaluate a former teammate, but they have to realize that now this is a business. And I think you're going to read body language. You're going to look, kind of, are there some hidden messages in the words that they tell you? I can tell you that if you played at LSU, you probably love football. If you played at Alabama, you probably love football. You just don't make it through those programs unless you love football. I think it's just a slippery slope when you start to involve your players in the evaluation process. They're really not experts. They oftentimes have a biased opinion. They're not guys that have studied the hours and hours of film like your scouts and your coaches have. They don't necessarily understand the 30,000-foot view of what you want to be as an organization. You certainly want to make sure that they feel involved to a certain extent, but you're not going to base your decision on that. But as another source of information, you access them. As a final decision maker, you really probably want to try to stay clear of that. And I think it puts the player in a tough position. You back him into a corner, and I don't know that that's fair to the player.
As far as the fifth pick goes, and I want to get into the middle rounds here, but last time we talked, I don't know if I convinced you, but either way, you were on Team Chase. I know a lot of people that went back and forth and have gone back and forth daily here in Cincinnati about the debate between Penei Sewell and Ja'Marr Chase. Are you still on Team Chase? Have you flipped? Are you on the other side? I won't blame you, by the way. I think it's two good spots to be in.
I remember that conversation. You thought for sure I was going Sewell. I led you down the Sewell road, then I flipped at the last second. I could flip again. I tell you what, they've got two great options. And I think what's important for Cincinnati is that, they come to a conclusion in that room amongst all of them. And I think I used this term with you last time. They're not all going to be in agreement, but they have to be in alignment. If they pick Sewell, the receiver coach and the offensive, this receiver coach is going to be like, that was my guy. The offensive coordinator now, he's going to be kind of split. I wanted the playmaker, but I understand the tackle. If they pick the receiver, the offensive line coach, wait, I need Sewell. He's a generational talent. He can change everything for us. I don't know. Look, I'm glad. Well, I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. I will tell you this. Whatever decision they make, in my opinion, is the right decision. They can't get it wrong unless they move off of one of those two, or if Kyle Pitts is available and they move off of him. And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they'll trade down. I think they'll stay right where they are. I think there's a ton of intrigue at that pick. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what decision they do make.
And if they do take Chase, or even heck, if they take Sewell or Pitts, I think they're going to address offensive line later in the drafts. Are any of these linemen, and we've talked about the depth of this class, do any of these linemen stand out to you as day two, maybe day three prospects that you'd want to target?
Yeah, I tell you, I'll bring up a name, and I'm not sure if you and I talked about it before, but his name's Walker Little. He's from Stanford.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a really talented kid, and he's had some injuries. And so I think teams will recognize the talent, but they'll be concerned with his injury history. And I think that's why you'll see him push down the board. But at some point in the draft, he becomes a value just because of the traits that he has, because of the size, the strength, the experience of playing on the Stanford offensive line, the intelligence, his history as a great player, not only in high school, but early in his career at Stanford. And someone will say, you know what, we know he has an injury history. We know there's a real chance here that, that could reappear, but the talent's undeniable. And we're going to take a chance on him. And if he stays healthy, he can be a really good player. And so that's a name I'm kind of watching. And I'm biased. I'll admit I'm biased. I'm a Pac-12 guy. I have a ton of respect for David Shaw in Stanford. I recruited Walker. I like him. But I think there's some value there at a certain point in the draft. And I think that's a guy to watch.
Last thing for me, Jim, and I appreciate your time as always. I'm sure you saw the Bengals' new uniforms. What do you think?
I like them. I mean, the Bengals uniform is a very unique uniform, starting from the helmet to the color scheme. I know that the decision opinions are always going to be split. Mm-hmm. I love the tiger stripes on the helmet, or the Bengal stripes, we'll call them. I like their color schemes. I think they can do a lot with them. I'll tell you what, if they win games, everyone's going to love their uniform.
Yeah.
If they lose games, nobody's going to like their uniform. It all comes down to winning and losing. Right now, it's just they're throwing, they put a new uniform out. Everyone has an opinion. Next week, when the draft comes, the uniform, That's over. Now it's, wow, they drafted Sewell. Oh, they drafted Chase. Oh, they drafted Pitts. Why didn't they draft the other guy? Or we love this guy. So the whole dialogue changes. But I like the uniform.
And that's true, by the way. I said last thing, but regardless of who they pick, regardless of the position, as long as he ends up being good, everyone will be happy.
And you know what? Any of the guys that they pick, and I keep throwing Pitts in, I think he'll be gone potentially. Sure. I think that he will with the trades that I think will happen. But whether they pick Jamar Chase or Sewell, or let's just throw Pitts in there, it's a win. And it's not just a little win, it's a huge win, because you're talking about great football players that can come in and have an immediate impact. Now, Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts, you'd see their impact because you'd see them catching the ball and making plays down the field and breaking tackles. But if you want to isolate on someone that's going to go dominate a really good pass rusher, put your eyes on their left tackle, Sewell, and you'll see his impact as well.
Jim, this was great. As always, I appreciate the time. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. You take care. Good luck.